Hi, and welcome to episode 7 of Crontendo. There's some interesting things this episode, but first of all, let's take a look at the last few games released in the butt end of 1985. Well, first up in this episode, we have the first of two games released on December 19th by Hudson Soft. The first one here is Binary Land. First thing you do is choose which character you want to control, the pink one or the green one. This is an old school style puzzle game originally released in 1983 on various Japanese computers. This NES port here has updated graphics and a few little changes have been made. The game might remind you a little bit of Nuts and Milk. Now this game is rather unusual in that you only control one character, but two move. The one on the right hand side there, the green penguin, is the one that you're controlling. The pink penguin will move in a mirrored left to right direction. So if you press right on your control pad, the pink penguin will move left. The object is to get both penguins to touch the cage tart at the same time. Along the way, you can be killed by spiders or get stuck in cobwebs. Luckily, you have a little ray gun that can be used to destroy spiders or cobwebs. I think the main challenge in this game is sort of learning to think that one character is always going to be moving the opposite direction. Once you sort of mentally get the hang of this, the game becomes a lot easier. Of course, there is a bonus round. The object is to simply collect hearts for extra points. Notice an appearance by the whale from Challenger here as a power-up. Hudson Soft would occasionally reuse their graphics. And of course, this game has a finite number of levels that eventually just repeat. Not a bad little game, can get quite challenging. It is sometimes sort of difficult to wrap your head around the concept of moving two characters at once but going in opposite directions. And of course you also have to sort of keep an eye on the left hand side of the screen and the right hand side of the screen. I find that I would normally die when I was trying to kill a spider or something on one side and was not watching what was going on the other side. Definitely worth playing this game, at least for a little bit. The second game Hudson Soft released on January 21st is a port of their 1983 computer game, Bomberman. That's right, this is the very first Bomberman game. And as I mentioned, this is a port of a game originally released for a variety of Japanese computers, probably most notably the MSX. The game looked quite a bit different in its original version. We'll take a look at that here. You might notice Bomberman looks quite a bit different. He appears to be some guy wearing a pork pie hat and suspenders. There's only one kind of enemy in the original Bomberman, some sort of pink balloon. The game is actually quite a bit more simple than the Famicom version. A number of features, various power-ups and whatnot, were added. One thing about the original MSX version is it does have a very cool death animation for Bomberman himself, as you'll see here. In reworking the game for the Famicom, Hudson reused one of the character designs from Lode Runner. Now Bomberman is supposed to be a robot as opposed to a guy who works in demolitions. Now Bomberman is an enormously popular series and of course lasted for many years, and I guess it's still around in some form or another, even though the last Bomberman game was not very well received. But this game is actually a little bit different than what you might be used to. Most surprisingly, this is only a single player game. There is no multiplayer option for this. The goal of the game is to, well, use your bombs to blow up all the enemies first of all, then use your bombs to uncover the door and exit. Along the way you can find various power-ups. This game's a little unusual in that the first levels are actually probably the hardest because your ability to blow up things is so limited. You can only drop one bomb at a time, the explosion is quite small, and there are actually quite a few things to uncover before you finally find the door. In round 1 there I almost ran out of time before I found it. You can only blow up so many walls with your limited bombing power. However, if you keep blowing things up, you'll eventually find power-ups that increase the bomb radius that will allow you to drop 2 bombs at once. As your blast radius increases, you'll find it's much easier to kill enemies since you don't have to get so close to them to set a bomb. One thing about this game is when you first turn it on, it doesn't really seem that exciting. However, the more you play, the better it gets. I really think finding some power-ups actually makes the game quite a bit more enjoyable. You can really sort of start doing things you normally associate with Bomberman, like setting off huge chains of explosions and whatnot. So I think that sort of this game is actually, really kind of worth sticking around for. Once you've kind of gotten a few power-ups, the game becomes much more playable. Altogether, I believe there are 50 levels in the Famicom version. There are also numerous hidden bonus point type things. There's a fireball that will increase my radius. The explosions are getting quite big now. Another very cool thing you'll find out later is a detonator that allows you to set bombs and then blow them up one at a time. This will allow you to set traps for the monsters and kill them in much more entertaining ways. As a rule, the monsters tend to get a bit more difficult as you go along. Eventually they can do things like walk directly through walls. And of course, as you get more and more firepower, you also stand a chance of blowing yourself up. So this is actually a pretty decent game, perhaps not as exciting as the later games in the series, but certainly worth playing. This game with no introductory music is Lot Lot by Tacoma Shoten. They are one of those enormous media conglomerates that publish magazines and anime and cartoons and so on and so forth, and occasionally they make video games. This is their first game for the Famicom, and it's actually a port of their 1985 arcade game. However, the arcade game, I believe, was actually originally licensed to Irem, even though I don't think they had anything to do with the development of either the arcade game or this Famicom port. It's a pretty simple game. How it works is this: you control the pink arrow, and then the green arrow actually follow exactly along the path of the pink arrow, only with a few seconds delay. So where you move your red arrow, the pink arrow will be following right behind it. When you press the button, the contents of the two cells the arrows are pointing to will be switched. The object is to get the balls to fall into the slots that are worth some points. What you don't want to do is have any balls fall down into the slot that says out. So this is a pretty interesting and simple idea for a puzzle game, and it's a fun little game. You can certainly play it for a little while and interest you. It's not too terribly exciting, and after a while, I mean, it's hard to imagine anyone becoming like a huge fan of this game. Kind of like Binary Land, it has sort of like a weird control system that takes a little while to get used to. Once you've gotten the hang of it, the game isn't really that hard. The grid never really changes anything. There you can see what happens when you get some balls in the out bin. A little crab starts coming up. If he gets all the way up to that red line and snips it, you have lost a life, and of course you have 3 lives as is standard. So every level the difficulty increases a little bit, more balls start coming through, and the sides of the bin are open for less period of time. Oh, there we go, I'm about to lose a life. Yep. So not a bad little game. It's fun for a little while. On the other hand, it's not too terribly challenging, at least at the earlier levels, and it's, really not that enthralling either. The same day as Lot Lot, Tacoma Shoten also released X'X's. Oddly enough, this game is a port of Capcom's 1984 vertical shoot-'em-up. Why didn't Capcom release this themselves? They were releasing games for the Famicom starting with 1942 earlier. I really don't know, but for whatever reason this was in fact released by Tacoma Shoten. Here's the original arcade version. This was one of Capcom's first shoot-'em-ups. US title to this was Savage Bees, and all your enemies in this are actually of the insect variety. You can see some nice parallax scrolling there. Obviously, this graphical feature was dropped for the Famicom release, which wasn't capable of those sorts of things. The arcade X'X's was a nice little shoot-'em-up, not a huge hit like 1942. Here we see the bonus screen. Hitting on the little POW icon will change all the enemies on the screen to fruit. This is sort of the high point bonus round here. Unfortunately, this game was, just like 1942, ported by Micronix. And again, their lack of technical ability certainly shows. One nice feature about this game, still not incredibly common for shoot-'em-ups, is that there are bosses every level. You need to shoot out all the skulls and orbs of light to blow this thing up. This game also has a number of features which were also in 1942. For example, various power-ups. I think I got an extra life right there, not to mention 5,000 points. Various power-ups such as double shot. The little POW thing which we saw, which will destroy all the enemies on the screen. It's actually not a bad little game. Here we have that windmill thing that appears in various Capcom games. This is actually a sub-boss. Yes, this game does feature sub-bosses right before you get to the great big boss. So I would classify this as a fun, unique, unusual shooter. The whole insect/bee thing makes it different than your average shooter, that's for sure. It plays pretty well. It certainly could be worse. It certainly could be a lot better if the porting had been handled by someone more competent than Micronix, but, the actual game design pretty much copies it almost exactly from the arcade, so not too much harm has been done. Compared to some of the older, more repetitive style shooters we've been seeing on the Famicom, this game is actually, pretty darn entertaining, all things considered. So I'd say definitely give this one a shot. It's one of the very earliest titles in the great shoot-'em-up revolution that was occurring around 1984 to 1985, and it still remains quite playable. And the last game of 1985 is Penguin-Kun Wars. First of all, note this game lets you enter in your name when you first start playing, something not seen too frequently so far. Now this is a port of a 1985 arcade game, originally by UPL, same folks who made Ninja-Kun. Guess they like things with the word Kun in the title. So this game involves some kind of sports tournament against various mammals in which the object of the game is to shoot balls to your opponent's side of the table. Every time a ball comes by, you can grab it, throw it off. The object is to get all 10 balls on your opponent's side, as you can see there. If you can't get all the balls over there before the timer runs out, when the timer runs out, whoever has the fewest balls on their side of the table will win. Now, one thing, of course, that makes the game interesting is that when you get hit by a ball, or when you hit your opponent, you will temporarily be knocked over and be unable to move. This, of course, is a good opportunity to keep pelting the other guy with the balls. And of course, this can happen to you as well. This game is both a single-player and a two-player game. The two-player version is probably a bit more fun, though in the later stages, and there really aren't a whole lot of stages, I think maybe, 4 or 5, the computer opponents can actually get quite fast and quite tricky. Once you've won a set, that's you have to win 2 games in a row, or 2 out of 3. There's just like a little bonus round here that you can't win or lose, you simply play for points, and you move on to the next level. Once you've gotten all the way to the top, you will have won the championship and it starts over again. So as you can see, it's a pretty fun, simple, relatively addicting little game. The game can get quite tricky, especially in the later levels playing against the computer. When the computer opponents get quite fast, one thing that can happen is you can be doing fine, maybe you're even ahead a little bit, you get hit by one ball, knocks you over, you're paralyzed, and then he keeps pummeling you with balls over and over and over again, and you actually can't move, and before you know it, he's got all 10 balls over on your side. Sometimes even like one little mistake like that can lose you the entire round later in the game. The balls will often start speeding up a little bit in the later rounds as well. So there you have it, nothing to get too excited about, but definitely some fun can be had playing this game. We now enter 1986, the 4th year the Famicom has been in existence. This year starts out slowly enough, with only 3 original titles being released in January and February, but the pace will pick up pretty quickly. Soon we'll see games for the Famicom coming out at a furious rate. While the first 3 years only produced around 97 games, 1986 will produce a total of 120 games for the Famicom. That works out to a new game about every 3 days. What does this mean? Well, it means we're going to see a lot of games that really aren't that good, even more so than in the past. Of course, a few classic franchises will be created in 1986 as well. Additionally, as games get larger and more intricate, they tend to rely more on text. In the case of the Famicom, that usually means Japanese text. While most of the games released so far have been playable by a non-Japanese reading person, that won't really be the case in 1986. In other words, a lot of the games released in the future are going to be pretty much incomprehensible to the average Westerner. Some of these games have been fan-translated, but quite a few have not. Of course, Crontendo will look at all these games, but we won't be able to make sense out of all of them. And the first Famicom game for 1986 is Twinbee, and this is a port of Konami's 1985 arcade game. As you may have gathered, this is a shooter very much in the Xevious mode. It's a vertical shooter. One thing about Twinbee is actually one of the first in a genre that we now call shoot-'em-ups. This genre was popularized by games like Fantasy Zone and Twinbee the arcade game. Basically a standard shoot-'em-up, only instead of shooting aliens and whatnot, you're shooting bizarre yet cute things, like maybe cats with angel wings or flying teacups and saucers or something. A genre that's more popular in Japan than the US. In Twinbee you have a laser cannon and you have bombs. Use one button to fire the laser cannon and the second button to throw your bombs. A little target will appear, as you can see there. It's actually a little bit harder than Xevious because your target only appears when you drop a bomb. so it's much easier to miss than it is in Xevious. Now, TwinBee is probably noted mostly for its rather strange system of power-ups. Occasionally shooting clouds, a little bell will pop out. If you collect the bell, you'll get bonus points. However, if you shoot the bell a certain number of times, it'll change color. Once it's changed colors, collecting it will get you a certain power-up. For example, a blue bell will be a speed increase. Another interesting thing about TwinBee is that it had actually a cooperative 2-player mode. Still unusual, you could actually join your 2 ships together and that would increase your firepower, as well as of course play separately. The Famicom version carries this over. This game, even though it looks rather cute and almost sort of like it might be for kids, is actually pretty difficult as far as these early shooters go. You can get a number of power-ups, such as the spread shot that you see there. Most of the power-ups, though, come not from things that you bomb, but rather from collecting bells, and this can actually make the game a bit annoying at times. We have one of the bosses coming up here. There are 6 levels altogether. Each one has a distinct boss. But about the power-ups, as I mentioned, if you hit them, they'll change eventually to a certain color, but it's really kind of hard to fight enemies and keep hitting a bell and keep it from dropping off the screen while you're waiting for it to change a certain color, and then of course once it is the color that you want, you can't shoot it again without it changing back to silver, which is strictly points. And you have to be careful. The first color it changes is generally blue. If you get too many power increases, it'll make the game very hard to play simply because your ship is going so fast. Starting at around level 3, this game actually does get pretty fast and pretty hectic. As you may have noticed, the enemies move a lot faster than enemies in games like Xevious, for example. A lot of early shooters seem to sort of be a little on the fast-paced side. There are various other nice little touches. For example, if you take a shot to the arms, you'll lose the arms and therefore not be able to throw bombs. Luckily for you, the first time this happens on any given life, a little ambulance will come and replace your arms for you. Second time it happens, you're simply out of luck. This game actually looks pretty good on the Famicom. I think sort of the bright color scheme and sort of simple graphics really help a lot. Yeah, I'd say this is probably one of the better shoot-'em-ups we've seen for the Famicom so far. The Famicom had been cursed with a lot of terrible shooters in its early years, but this one is really not one of them. It's actually a pretty good game, a lot better than Gaimos, so I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. Only 3 original games were released in February of 1986, and the first of them is Sun Sun. This is a port of Capcom's 1984 arcade game. Here's the original arcade game here. You play the character of Sun Sun, which is apparently in fact based on Sun Wukong, the character from the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. The novel is quite long and complicated, but suffice to say it involves Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, journeying to India in order to find some sacred Buddhist scriptures. Along the way, he's accompanied by various other folks, including the pig character, who is the second player character in this game. This game does feature a 2-player cooperative mode. The arcade game was not the most graphically advanced looking game at the time, so the Famicom version actually captures it pretty accurately. The game is usually described as a side-scrolling platformer, but it's really nothing at all like the kind of game you might think of, such as Mario Brothers. Basically, you can sort of run up and down on these various platforms here. Enemies come out towards you. They tend to sort of try to jump to the same level that you're on and hit you. The character Sun Wukong is armed with some sort of staff, though in this game you just sort of fire little bullets. Occasionally you'll come across these little scenes where you have to break through the blocks and destroy the wizards or whatever these are, these guys shooting fireballs at you, all the while still being harassed by regular enemies. This occurs, I don't know, perhaps 4 or 5 times throughout the game, and occasionally you'll come across these boss-like characters. They're not actually difficult to defeat, so I don't know that we can really call them bosses, but these large floating giants do appear from time to time. If this game doesn't seem as cool as a lot of other Capcom titles, well, keep in mind this is actually Capcom's second arcade release. So how's the Famicom version fare? Well, I certainly hope you like lots of sprite flicker, because this game has it in spades. This was, unfortunately, once again, converted by Micronix, a company that tends to put out games with lots of slowdown, sprite flicker, etc. Here's those boss-like creatures I was telling you about. Now throughout the game you'll find little distance markers, starting with I think 19. Here we're on the very final level, number 1. This is actually the end of the game. Right here we finally get that scroll. Unfortunately, this game is extremely repetitive. It's mostly just the exact same thing over and over again with slight variations on the enemies. Not the most exciting game in the world, and the extremely bad conversion makes this game, well, not quite unplayable, but probably as close to unplayable as you can actually get. The flicker is so bad you often can't really tell how many enemies are on the same level with you, because they're constantly blinking back and forth. You don't know if you've shot someone or if they've just started flickering out for a second. Unfortunately, the repetitive nature of this game and the serious technical issues means I cannot recommend it. If the early months of 1986 seem sort of slow, well, Nintendo did have one very big card up its sleeve. On February 21st, they released a new add-on for the Famicom, the Famicom Disk System. The FDS played games on small floppy disk-like disks rather than the more expensive cartridges. An adapter for the FDS plugged directly into the cartridge slot of your Famicom. The FDS certainly had some advantages over the old cartridge system. First of all, the disks were rewritable, so games could be saved. Additionally, these were quite a lot cheaper to manufacture, and they had comparatively low retail costs as compared to the regular Famicom cartridges. For example, Zelda on disc cost around 2,400 yen. Most Famicom cartridges cost around 4,500 yen. Or, if a gamer was even more frugal, stores would have disc writing machines that would allow you to write a new game onto an old disc. You could also buy blank discs. Unfortunately, this makes collecting used FDS discs a bit more difficult. You never know for sure what game is actually going to be on the disc until you put it into your machine. Though it was never released in the United States, in Japan the system was quite popular, selling around 2 million units the first year. However, the system peaked in popularity pretty quickly, and by around 1989, the number of games released was starting to tail off. On the launch date, a total of 7 titles were released. 1 new title, and then 6 reissues of some of Nintendo's more popular games. Yeah, believe it or not, Golf and Mahjong were among the biggest selling games on the Famicom at that time. Altogether, there were around 200 titles released for the system. The quality really varies. There's absolute classics like Zelda and Metroid, and then there's a lot of games that are sort of cheaply and quickly made by off-the-wall developers. It really is a mixed bunch. So, without further ado, we'll take a look at the first one. As we turn on the Famicom Disk System hardware here, we'll load up the first original game for the FDS, Zelda no Densetsu, the Hyrule Fantasy, or as we call it in the United States, Legend of Zelda. There's another highly effective Koji Kondo theme song there. Now, if you were Shigeru Miyamoto, after having created Super Mario Bros., one of the most influential games of all time, you would probably go and take a little vacation. But not the case with Miyamoto. He immediately went on to release Legend of Zelda, a mere 4 months after Super Mario Bros. Granted, Zelda was in development for some time. In the Japanese introduction here, notice the plot details actually given in English, and all the titles of the items are listed both in English and Japanese. Now, one of the advantages of the FDS is the ability to save games. The first thing you do here is create a profile, save the profile, and then you can save and load games. Notice that there are somewhat long load times for the FDS. It was a disk-based system, unlike the cartridge where everything loaded up instantly. Another advantage of the FDS was its larger storage capacity than cartridges. This would allow games to be much longer, take up much more space, and be much more sophisticated than previous games. And a game like Zelda really needed some sort of method of saving the game. Whereas you could play Super Mario Bros. In one sitting, that really wasn't possible for Zelda, at least while you were still learning the game. It's interesting to think that both Mario and Zelda, probably Nintendo's two big franchises, were released so close to each other. Now when the game actually loads, it sort of plops you down in the middle of nowhere here. The first thing you'll need to do is to get some sort of weapon, because you start off with absolutely nothing at all. Now this game was released about a year and a half later, in 1987, in the United States on a cartridge. Here, of course, is the more commonly known US version. Of course, you also needed to be able to save. The cartridge version actually used a battery save pack inside the cartridge. This was certainly a much better way to save than the password system, which was sometimes utilized on long games. So as the game begins, you can simply start wandering around and exploring at your will. Now, one thing to realize is that Zelda more or less created a brand new genre, but genres don't just spring out of nowhere. This game did have predecessors. Many of the elements in Zelda were taken from other games. Zelda was massively influential, and there was really nothing quite like it on the system, but it didn't spring full-grown out of Miyamoto's head. Miyamoto likes to talk about how the game was inspired by his exploring caves in his childhood, and while this very well may be true, definitely Zelda did borrow things from earlier games. Zelda is very similar in plot to Tower of Druaga, and a surprising amount of the imagery from Zelda has some sort of antecedent in Druaga. For example, these little wizards that spit out balls of fire, and the little knights that roam around with their swords sticking out. Many of the items that you find in Zelda, swords, magic wands, shields, rings, candles, books, also existed in Druaga. Challenger, which we've seen already, has a very similar sort of overworld with dungeon type layout to it. And of course, role-playing games were starting to become popular in Japan as well. Here's a 1985 role-playing game for the MSX called Hydlide. Again, the layout of the game is very similar to Zelda. You sort of have a large overworld with various dungeons to explore, little monsters running around the countryside. You kill them by running into them, very much like Zelda. One thing Zelda had these three games didn't was shops where you could buy items, either items to improve your character or some items that were required to advance the plot. While Zelda is not a role-playing game really, it does borrow a lot of ideas from role-playing games. Here we find just one of the many hidden areas that you can find after obtaining the blue candle. Of course, this woman won't actually do anything for you until you get another item, a letter, a little bit later in the game. Now the object of the game is sort of wander around on the overworld until you encounter the 9 dungeons that are scattered throughout the land. Here's the very first one right here. Every dungeon is full of interconnected rooms, and which are full of monsters. You can eventually get a map. Keys are often necessary to open the various doors throughout the dungeon. Once inside the dungeon, you need to find and defeat the boss, and then obtain another piece of the Triforce, which is this triangular-shaped doohickey that Zelda games all revolve around. The plot of Zelda, for those who don't know it, is that the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda, has been kidnapped by some sort of evil creature named Ganon. Link needs to travel around the world, find the various pieces of the Triforce, and then use it to defeat Ganon. And of course, rescue the princess. Here's the very first boss right here. He's actually pretty simple. While Zelda doesn't feature character levels or stats or anything like that, there are ways that you'll be constantly improving your character. For example, the little heart containers that are found after each boss will increase your life bar. Also, in order to complete the game, you'll need to find various objects that are hidden in the dungeons as well. For example, once you find the life raft, you can use it to cross the river and get to this dungeon. Another concept that Zelda borrows from RPGs is that monsters will drop items when you kill them. It could be money, known as rupees in the game's currency. Monsters can drop inventory items, they can drop healing items that will refill your life bar. Sometimes they'll drop things you need to progress in the game, like keys. One concept that other games like Challenger and whatnot didn't have was the idea of money. Monsters drop jewels, which you can then use to buy things. Sometimes the things in shops are items that will improve your character, other things are plot devices necessary to actually finish the game, such as the monster bait. Just like Tower of Druaga, Zelda has a lot of secrets. For example, you need to push that little space open in order to get into the boss level. And there's a lot of optional ones as well, ways of getting free money, items, better swords, and so on and so forth. This concept, along with that of the shops, will become pretty frequent in video games in the very near future. It really can't be overstated that this game was massively successful both in Japan and the United States, and had an enormous influence on later generations of games. The number of Zelda clones released in Japan is actually quite staggering. Here we'll see how to find a hidden sword. It's actually the best sword in the game, the so-called magical sword. And that, of course, is another concept that was somewhat new to Zelda, that of exploration. The game was not at all linear. There was actually a certain order to the dungeons that you should probably go through them in, but you could pretty much wander around the overworld as you wished, as long as you weren't getting killed. Again, this idea was borrowed from RPGs like Hydlide, but really kind of reached its zenith in Legend of Zelda. Here's one of the many hidden underground passages you'll need to discover while playing the game. And while this game does have a lot of secret items, it's not nearly as sadistic as something like Tower of Druaga. It's much more playable than that game. In both Japan and the US, Zelda came with a rather large booklet that explained the items, the monsters, and even sort of like a beginning walkthrough for the game. That way players would not be completely lost. A lot of the items have special uses. For example, the bow and arrow is used to kill these monsters. That's the only way they can be killed. Monsters tend to have different weaknesses in Zelda. You can't just use your sword on all of them. Zelda is in many ways sort of a giant puzzle which you have to figure out. And the game itself gives you many hints, not all of which are particularly helpful. One thing that this game introduced was the mysterious character who gives you some sort of hint, but can only say exactly one thing, and that one thing is often not as clear as you would like it to be. The game is full of these little helpful guys who absolutely refuse to explain themselves. All these different things sort of add up to Zelda being an early attempt at a totally immersive game, a game that would feel not just like you're playing a video game, but rather you're sort of inside a little world, this even more so than Super Mario Bros. Whereas Mario is very linear, Zelda is not. You can pretty much roam around as you'd like, just like a US computer RPG. Miyamoto called this concept sort of like having your own little miniature garden. Much of the fun of the game is wandering around and making discoveries. One of the things you'll need to discover is the location of the final dungeon. It's sort of hidden away in the very corner of the world. You'll need to plant a bomb in order to find the door. Oddly enough, bombs feature quite prominently in this game, which is kind of strange because Bomberman and Goonies were released right around the same time. Now here's a little bit of a spoiler alert. We'll actually see the final level, the final boss, and the end of the game right here. There is Ganon. Perhaps a bit disappointing. He doesn't actually move, he's just a variety of static sprites. You will actually need to have found a special item, a silver arrow, before you can actually defeat Ganon. It can be somewhat difficult to find. The final dungeon is actually quite large, around 50 squares. One thing about Zelda is the overall size of the game. As I mentioned, Hydlide had a sort of very similar layout, but it was only 5 by 5 squares for a total of 25. I believe the overworld of Zelda has around 150 different screens, and there's also at least that in the various dungeons as well. Zelda was a very lengthy game, and of course you actually do a lot of backtracking and moving around the overworld on this game. The actual dungeons are spread out all over the place, and you will often find yourself sort of having to cross the overworld many times. By today's standards, this might be considered a flaw. We seem to prefer games where you're sort of constantly moving forward rather than having to backtrack over the same territory over and over again. So here we have the closing cutscene. Zelda actually had an actual ending. Not all games did, though of course, in the style of games of the 1980s, once you're done, you actually get to play it again. Just like Super Mario Brothers, there's a second adventure, which is actually a bit more difficult. And Zelda may have been one of the very first games to have credits at the end. Miyahan was actually Miyamoto's nickname. It's an alternate reading of the Japanese characters in his name. Using pseudonyms or nicknames in the credits seemed to be pretty common in Japanese games at this time. So, in conclusion, Legend of Zelda is a great game. It takes things from all sorts of game genres, action, adventure, RPGs, puzzle games, mixes them all together in a totally consistent way, and is something that at the time gamers found new, fresh, and exciting, and to this day remains to be a very playable game. Released the same day that the Famicom Disk System debuted was Konami's Goonies, based on the 1985 Richard Donner film, and this is the first Famicom game based on a movie. It certainly wouldn't be the last, because movie and TV tie-ins will become quite common on this system. The movie Goonies concerns a ragtag group of kids who descend into a cave looking for some hidden pirate's treasure while dodging a criminal family called the Fratellis. This game, while it does feature characters from the movie, is a little different. The object is to find all the kidnapped Goonies. You play Mikey, the character portrayed by Sean Astin in the movie, though you look exactly the same as the other Goonies in the game. You navigate through 6 different levels. The game ends when you find the pirate ship and rescue the last Goonie, Andy. This game is very much a platformer in the style of Spelunker or something like that, though of course it's much better than Spelunker. In order to complete a level, you'll need to find all the keys that are hidden in the safes scattered around the level. Those are little doors with the skull on them. In order to bust into a safe, you'll need to first of all collect a bomb. Be careful when setting bombs, because it's quite easy to blow yourself up, just like in Bomberman. You collect the bombs by killing the rats that roam the stages. You can only hold one bomb at a time, so you'll need to get a bomb, set it off, then kill another rat. Other things that are hidden inside the saves, other than just the keys, are the kidnapped Goonies. Occasionally there's some sort of power-up inside a safe, or there's potions that will refill your life bar. There's actually quite a few items to be found in this game. You can actually see them up there on the top of the screen. Like right now I only have bombs, but you can also get various kinds of armor, special kinds of armor that will protect you from fire or water. You can get a slingshot that will allow you to attack from a distance, rather than just the kung fu kick that's your default. At any rate, once you have all the keys necessary, you head to the end of the level and go through the door. Then you're on to the next level. This first level is quite short, but the later levels are actually much longer and much more complicated. There's also a number of hidden items to be found. Every level has like a unique keypad operation that you put in that will cause a hidden item to appear if you're in the right spot. For example, right there we got Konami Man for some bonus points. Now you can see the little jewels appearing. Collecting enough of those will refill your life bar. For some reason, this game was actually not released for the NES in the United States. It was released in arcades in one of the Play Choice 10 machines. I actually remember playing this game in a grocery store or something when I was young. However, the second game, Goonies 2, was released for the NES, and it's probably a bit more well known than this. It's a real shame because this is actually a very good platformer compared to a lot of the stuff we've seen on the Famicom, like say Challenger or Spelunker. I mean, this game is actually really very well made. It controls well, it's challenging, there's a lot of things you can explore. This is really a game that should have been released on the NES. They certainly released much worse, that's for sure. I'm not sure if this game was successful in Japan or not. It may have been somewhat overshadowed by Legend of Zelda and the release of the Famicom Disk System. But if you're looking for some old school platforming fun, this game is highly recommended. The next game for the Famicom was also by Konami, though it was actually developed by a company called SoftPro. This is a port of the 1984 arcade game Circus Charlie. We'll look at the arcade version here. And in 1984, even by standards of that particular time, this game was pretty simple. As you can see, the Famicom version looks an awful lot like the arcade version. The colors aren't quite as good, and the graphics aren't quite as detailed, but it's pretty faithful. This game is certainly a change of pace from Zelda and the Goonies. It's hard to imagine a game any more simple than this. It mostly just involves jumping over stuff. This game seems to be perhaps designed with kids in mind, with its sort of cute little circus theme and very simple gameplay. It does actually get a bit trickier in the later levels. Once you sort of get used to the fact that you cannot control your player at all in mid-jump, it's not really that difficult. So it's I would hesitate to call this a bad game. It's well designed and controls pretty well, but it's so simple that you may or may not actually enjoy playing it. Another sort of old-fashioned feature, it actually has a B mode, which is a slightly more difficult mode. So Circus Charlie is certainly a well-designed game, but in the face of stuff like Super Mario Bros. And Legend of Zelda, it almost seems ridiculously old-fashioned. Our final three games will all be shoot-'em-ups. This is the first, Gyrodyne, and this is a port of a 1985 arcade game, designed by a company called Crux, but actually manufactured by Taito. Taito is also the one who apparently ported this to the Famicom. Here we see the original arcade version. Quite a bit more graphical detail. Notice nice little touches like the shadow underneath your vehicle there. A lot of texture. Obviously, for the Famicom port, this was graphically downgraded quite a bit. There's really very little texture on the backgrounds. No shadow, nothing like that. Now this game is a vertical shoot-'em-up, more or less in the style of Xevious. Maybe it's sort of halfway between Xevious and Tiger Heli. This game is a lot slower moving than some of the other shooters we've been seeing on the Famicom recently. Rather methodically paced. You have, just like in Xevious, two types of weapons. There's a air-to-surface weapon, not really quite bombs. They look more like air-to-surface missiles. And you have air-to-air weapons as well, which you use to take out the various flying enemies you come across. Also, if you hit both buttons at once, you'll fire some sort of cruise missile like you saw there for a second. Unfortunately, I haven't really been able to find much use for the cruise missile. It mostly just sort of, you can control it a little bit, but mostly it sort of swerves right past your enemies. So Gyrodyne falls into the general category that a lot of shoot-'em-ups do for the Famicom of this era. Neither very bad nor very good. This does seem quite a bit like Xevious. You sort of fly past a bunch of forests rivers. Eventually you'll come across little bases. There's no real levels, no real bosses that I've come across. Mostly just sort of fly and blow things up. Often there'll be little brief pauses of inactivity, and then a new enemy will start showing up. Some of these can be a little annoying, like for example these cruise missiles here that fly past you at incredible speed. So that's really all there is to say about Gyrodyne. For fans of vertical shooters, it's certainly not a bad game, but there were much more exciting shooters coming out in the arcades at this time. This is Hydlide Special, released in Japan by Toshiba EMI, though as you can see on the credits, the game was actually designed by a company called T&E Soft, a Japanese company known mostly for their golf games. Now Hydlide, assuming that's how it's pronounced, is a very interesting game. Notice I didn't say it's a good game because it's not, but it is probably about the first RPG ever released in Japan. Originally for the MSX in 1985. You can see the MSX version here. Yes, this game was, I suppose, officially the beginning of the console RPG genre. Not that I would recommend that anyone who's into RPGs play this game because it's notoriously bad. In fact, it's often considered, like several other games we've discussed recently, to be one of the worst games ever released for the Famicom or NES. Why this was released in the US in 1989 no less is anybody's guess. Hydlide is an action RPG, meaning it's not turn-based, you actually fight monsters by running into them. Of course, go very far and you'll run into monsters that will instantly kill you, like that zombie there. When you first play the game, it's probably best to stick to the little blue slimes that run around the area immediately where you first start off. Almost anything else will kill you instantly. Like a lot of Japanese RPGs, this game seems mostly based around leveling up. As you can see, you have very little life, very little strength, very little magic when you first start. Killing one monster will move up your experience one little tiny notch. Once the experience bar fills all the way up, your life will go up and your strength will go up and your magic will go up. As you see here, I just hit level 2. Unfortunately, it takes about 100 monsters to level up one level, and the way this game plays, it's actually quite tedious. You need to use your button to switch between defend mode and attack mode. You don't see any visual change there, but when he's in attack, he'll actually be able to kill a monster. Defend, you won't take as much damage, but you will do almost no offense, at least in your early levels. There's a very little menu there. One thing you can do is a temporary save file. It would be quite impossible to actually play this game without this. Notice it doesn't actually save the game after you turn off your machine. You have to use passwords if you want to start a new session, but you can put a temporary save file that allows you to restart from where you saved if you died without turning off your machine. There are some very small dungeons here. Most dungeons are about this size, usually about 2 screens. And the actual overworld is quite small, only 5 screens by 5 screens. Therefore there's a total of 25 screens, plus a few extra screens for dungeons. I think there's maybe 3 dungeons in the entire game. This game certainly looks a lot like Tower of Joaga, at least superficially, and it takes a few pages out of the books of Ultima as well, especially Ultima 3, which was sort of the RPG, the computer RPG at this time. The object of the game is to collect 3 fairies. Turns out a princess was somehow split into 3 fairies. We just found fairy 2 there hidden in that little moving tree. Your object is to find all 3 and then go to the dungeon and kill the demon that turned her into fairies. Once you've collected all 3, you can go down there. Of course, there's sort of various little objects you have to collect. For example, to defeat the vampire in the beginning of the game, you have to get across. You have to get various, jewels, keys, that sort of thing. There's only maybe 10 objects in the entire game, including one sword that'll upgrade your offensive capabilities, one shield, a ring that'll make you heal a bit faster, but the game is very simple. There's really not a lot of object collecting, just mostly items that are needed to advance the plot. You do have magic spells you can use, Turn, Fire, Ice, Wave, and Flash, but they're pretty much useless in most situations. You only really have to use them a couple times. Most of your time is spent simply bumping into monsters. One thing about this game that makes it a little frustrating, here we have sort of like a little mini boss here. You have to kill those two guys, those two magicians, but unfortunately you have to kill them using the wave magic, and you have to hit them both with the wave at the same time. Only hitting one won't do the job. It's quite frustrating, as most of the boss battles are in this game. This game is somewhat of an exercise in frustration. When you hit monsters, you tend to take a little bit of damage yourself, especially if you hit them sort of at the wrong angle. This means your life bar is sort of constantly decreasing as you play the game, and you have no life magic, no healing items. Your life heals up automatically if you stand on the overworld. It also heals very, very slowly, as you can probably see by watching the life bar. So when you defeat dangerous monsters like this, even though I'm pretty much completely leveled up, I do take quite a bit of damage every time I touch him, and actually do very little damage. So fighting a boss like this is basically a matter of running up, touching him, running back, waiting for your life bar to level up a little bit, and then just repeat over and over and over again until finally, bit by bit, you get his health down to nothing. There is really very little strategy or skill required in most of the battles. It's really more of a matter of patience than anything else. Here I've got the medicine, the only healing item in the game. It can only be used once, so you want to use it during the boss battle. Before you fight the boss, you have to get one last remaining item here. I got a Luby! Hide Light is definitely what we call a historically important game. As I mentioned, it was pretty much the first ever Japanese RPG, and it's pretty primitive, as you can see. But it is also quite unplayable. Only the most masochistic RPGer could actually sit down and play this game all the way through. I mean, it's not very long if you know what you're doing. There is very little hints given. There's really not much along the lines of dialogue. No helpful old men like in Zelda sort of give you any kind of idea of what to do. You sort of run around and hit things until you find something, and just sort of explore around the relatively small world here. So I'm sure very few people will actually want to do this themselves. I'll actually show you the ending of the game after you defeated the final demon there. 3 fairies appear, and they magically materialize back into the princess. And then that's it. Absolutely nothing. Congratulations. You just played a rather boring game. Honestly, about 75% of this game will be leveling up, fighting the same monsters over and over and over and over again. And about 10% will be waiting for your health bar to increase. And then the remaining percent will simply be wandering around looking for stuff. The massive amount of repetitious leveling up action and then the frustration of getting killed frequently really make this game a real drag to play. Well, here's something a little different. It's Magmax, a port of Nichibutsu's 1985 arcade game. This is the original arcade game right here. As you can see, it's a 3/4 view shooter that actually switches back and forth between this kind of view and a straight side-on view if you go underground. Nice little game, and the arcade version's pretty nice, and the Famicom actually looks pretty decent as well. It has the same little intro here, and the game actually plays quite a bit like the arcade version. This is Nichibutsu's first Famicom game. They had a few arcade hits back in the 80s, such as Crazy Climber and Terra Cresta. They were never a huge player, however. Nowadays, I believe they make mahjong games, and of course that popular Japanese genre, porno mahjong games. Now this game is, believe it or not, yet another game in which your ship can transform into a giant robot. But unlike all those other terrible games, this one is actually pretty good. You collect the pieces one by one. For example, there's the legs. And lo and behold, changing into what actually does something useful, you can fire off more shots. In a lot of the other robot shooters, your robot form is actually pretty useless, other than making you larger and easy to hit. In this game it's actually quite convenient, not only for the extended firepower, but also for the fact that each time you get hit, you'll only lose one part. You won't actually die until you're reduced down to your regular ship there, as you just saw. There are several different levels here. This one is the underwater level, apparently. Probably visually the least interesting of all the levels. At various points you can actually sort of choose your path. You can either go underground or you can go back up to the surface. I personally sort of prefer the underground scenes because I like the side view a little bit better than 3/4 view. 3/4 view can actually be a bit trickier to hit things because you might think you're hitting them, but actually your shot is going right behind them. The underwater sequence is probably the most difficult, as you have all those little holes there that kind of suck you into them. Here's the final boss, a 3-headed dragon. Actually a pretty cool looking boss for a shooter of this vintage. Magmax is not a particularly hard game, but it's actually quite a bit better than your average Formation Z style shooter like we're seeing on the Famicom at this time. Unfortunately, the boss doesn't really blow up or anything, he just sort of shuts down. Once you've gotten past this last level here, the whole thing basically starts again. Now we're back into the same field that we started at. So definitely a pretty good game and worth trying out. A good rule of thumb for the Famicom releases during this era is that one thing you can always count on is games about ninjas and shoot-'em-ups. This game, Baltron, is a pretty generic shoot-'em-up. This game is the debut from yet another company trying to cash in on the popularity of the Famicom, Toei Animation. They are a ridiculously prolific animation studio, maybe nowadays best known for the Dragon Ball Z cartoons. Back in the 80s they also did stuff like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe and that sort of thing. They've been around for quite some time. This game was actually developed by an obscure little company called Bears that I don't really know anything about. And if you pop this thing and you start playing it, the first thing that'll enter your mind is, hey, wait a second, this game looks exactly like Defender. And that's really all it is just a rather mediocre Defender clone. I played this game for a little while wondering if, I was actually missing something, or if there really is all there is to this game is just fly through the air and just shoot stuff. There don't appear to be any levels or bosses or anything, so it's obviously made very quickly and very cheaply. What's the purpose of this game existing? Well, I guess it's just to get product on the shelves. No other reason. This game is definitely the least interesting title that we've covered this episode, but it's actually not bad. It's just mediocre and has no reason to exist. Well, don't worry, next episode we'll be back looking at some really awful games again.